let G represent the inverse of F. If you want to write it like this, you could. You could say G is F inverse. We just did that same idea on the last problem. Find F of G of X and find an equation for the derivative of the inverse of a function. Whoa, what? Okay, find F of G of X. Okay, here's the fun part. Back in the day, you learned this random obscure fact that if F and G are inverses of each other, then plugging in the composite gives you, okay, I'm not going to finish that sentence until I grab a scrap piece of paper, find an empty corner, and let's just go with it. The very first problem we did had this as an original function and had this as its inverse with a domain restriction, but for the sake of conversation, let's leave it off. You could ignore the other doodling on this paper. If I do F of F inverse of X, then I would have F of X squared plus 1. Okay. I'm going to plug this into the F function, which is the square root of X squared plus 1 minus 1. So all this X becomes that stuff, and I have the square root of X squared, right? Plus 1 minus 1. Well, that's just X. Here's the deal. Inverses undo what's been done. So if I undo everything that I did, I get what I had to start with, and my input originally was just X. And because G and F are inverses, this is a true statement. Now, we're going to find F of G of X and find the equation of the derivative. So let's go with a little bit of, implicit differentiation. You're welcome. I love it. The derivative with respect to X on both sides. Squeeze that in there. Okay, the derivative with respect to X of X is 1. That's the easy part. The derivative of F of G of X, oh, that's just the chain rule. How lovely. And there's no Y's in here, just chain rule it. Don't complicate your life. F of G of X becomes F prime of G of X times G prime of X. All right. Find F of G of X, done, and find an equation for the derivative of an inverse. So here we go. If G is the inverse, then G prime is the derivative of the inverse. And they're asking us to find the formula for the derivative of an inverse, so we're just going to get this by itself. We're going to find this. G prime of X equals 1 over F prime of G of X. All right. Here we go. Fun little formula here. The formula for the derivative of an inverse function is that. It is that. And I am going to write it exactly the way it's written. If F and G are inverses, then the derivative of the inverse, I think that's worth writing a little bit differently. Derivative of the inverse is equal to 1 over the derivative of the original function of the inverse function. We're going to use that formula.